Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Over the next hour, we unfold your map to financial freedom. You'll learn how to retire through investing in single-family and multifamily real estate. You'll learn how to create cash flow and build wealth so you can have the time and money to live the lifestyle you want.
Welcome to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show, proudly standing in for the Colonel Al Gordon. I'm Mike Harrison, and yes, as always, we're working on your financial freedom. I'm fired up to bring you this show today, this Tell Al show today. And if you're wondering where the Colonel is, well, he's on vacation, taking in a little bit of that lifestyle that we always talk about here at Lifestyles Unlimited. So if you're hearing me for the first time, you may be saying, well, who's this Harrison guy? Well, I am the radio host out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Yeah, there's three of us that do the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show. Some of us, different stations, different parts of the country, different times, different days of the week. I joined Lifestyles Unlimited in 2013. I started very slowly, single-family properties, eventually graduated to multifamily properties. Today, I'm a passive investor in over 25 different multifamily investments in 4 different states. Yes, I continue to invest even in today's challenging market. In fact, I have 2 deals closing in the next couple of weeks. But that's enough about me. And like I said, I started very slow, unlike today's guest, who essentially recognized immediately the power of real estate investing. Very short amount of time, she has accomplished quite a bit. Sara E, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Sara, before we get into it, a little teaser for those of us trapped in this excessive heat dome in Texas. What's the temperature right now in South Carolina where you are?
Well, I've actually moved from South Carolina to Maine. It's a gorgeous 70 degrees and slightly foggy.
Oh, my. Ouch.
By the coast. Yeah, so it's a beautiful day.
Oh, man, that was a shank to the ribs right there. But you know what? I'm happy for you. Enjoy it. We'll get there eventually. Sara, give us a little bit of background as we unpeel this show.
Yeah, so I grew up moving around a lot, and so I craved stability. And so of course I did that by marrying someone in the Air Force, where we moved around all the time. So I had to learn how to be an entrepreneur and reinvent myself over and over. Every 3 years or so, because sometimes my jobs and my skill set or my license wouldn't be honored at a new location. And that's just what you have to do when you're a military spouse. And so finally, when we landed back in the States and we were civilians, I just thought, I'm going to build something for myself now. And I felt like I had to kind of hurry up to catch up to my husband. And real estate was the way I wanted to go about doing that. And so I was really fortunate that I happened to land in Houston.
Oh,
and
perfect.
I was reading all these books about real estate, and one of the common threads was, get a mentor. You need a mentor. And so I was searching, real estate mentors.
Yeah.
And that's when Lifestyles Unlimited came up. And I thought, no way. They're like down the road from me. And they were having informational seminars. And I thought, okay, I have to go check this out. So that was sort of how I arrived there.
I love it. I was going to ask you how you found Lifestyles Unlimited, but you're right there in the heart of where Lifestyles Unlimited began. And with your timing, you were essentially landed at a perfect time to begin your investment path right there in Houston. So obviously you found Lifestyles Unlimited. You went to the 2-day or went to the free workshop. How'd that unfold?
Yeah, so I went to a free workshop, which Dell was giving. And then I came back and I went to a case study. And I was still pretty skeptical. And one of the things that Dell told me was, you're asking the wrong questions. And I thought, well, teach me the right questions, right? You're like,
yeah. What do you mean?
And one Yeah. So one of the core things that Dell taught me over the years is that building wealth for yourself, no matter where you're coming from and no matter what avenue you choose, a lot of it is mentality. Like you have to change, you have to be able to examine the thoughts that you have and that you grew up with about wealth, and you have to be able to
challenge those.
Yeah, exactly.
That was tough
and
for
Dell
me.
Did challenge my thoughts because I thought I'd done everything right.
Yeah. I'm with you.
And it was hard to wrap my head in the beginning around the fact that actually I had done everything half right. I had done everything to permanently seat myself in the middle class. And if I wanted to move beyond that, I had to be willing to challenge myself and look outside some of my pre-existing beliefs and then test them.
Now, Sara, you joined in 2015, and then you made a quick jump to our preferred level, our highest level, to begin investing in apartment communities. What clicked with you, and why'd you do that?
Yeah, so I will say I started out very skeptical, but I came to as many of the free in-person events that I could, and one of the sort of turning points for me was actually one of the case studies, because I remember there was a young man, so he was younger than I was. He immigrated to the U.S. from, I believe it was Nigeria, and his English was heavily accented, and he bought a single family and just went for it.
Yeah.
And in the same case study, I think there was also a massage therapist, someone who hadn't been to college and, again, just went for it. And I thought, if they can do it, I can do it. What am I waiting for? And so that was how I got my foot in the door. It's really important to hear other people's stories because these are regular people. These are not paid actors, And so that's a big part of the Lifestyles community is that people do give back. People will say, hey, this is what I did. This is what I learned, down to actually giving you, here are the paint colors that I'm using in my apartment. These are some of the most popular colors right now.
Yeah.
It's really helpful to have that access and community.
Sara, I want to touch on case study just for the listener that may not understand. And we say real people, real results, and that sounds so cliche, but literally every one of our offices, we have a case study night once a month, and literally 3 members will get up typically, and your first 2 are single-family property owners, and the first one's usually someone that's their first property. They started out, and they share everything. Here's the house I bought. Here's how I found it. Here's my out-of-pocket. Here's my cash-on-cash return. Here's my equity capture. Second person's usually someone a little more that's been doing it for 2-3 years. They may have 5, 6, 7, 10 houses. And then third's the apartment community. But yes, Sara, you're exactly right. All walks of life. I've seen police officers, truck drivers, doctors, dentists, attorneys, teachers, librarians. We have a member in Dallas-Fort Worth, and he's a rodeo champion. So, Sara, you went on and purchased that in 2016, literally less than a year after joining a small 10-unit apartment community. Tell us about that property. What'd you see in it, and what was the opportunity?
I did, and not only that, but I purchased it as I was moving out of Houston to South Carolina. So this was... No. So one of the things that I had learned at Lifestyles was how to look at a market and also how to look at an asset. So, my inspection was good. This was like really high quality garden style, like 1980s architecture with brick. And the previous owner had not updated it in, I want to say, 2 decades.
Wow.
So I just saw huge opportunity when I was looking at it. And, but, some people will say, oh, that's crazy. Like you were moving, like you didn't really know the market. But, I knew everything that I had learned from Lifestyles and how to evaluate it. And to me, it looked great. And, so since I was sort of testing out this new market and it was my first deal, I did start my renovation slowly. So my first renovation, I would call it like a 50% renovation, but then I placed a tenant immediately at a rent increase. And my next renovation was like a 75% renovation, again, immediately placed residents. So after that, I just did 100% renovations and was so happy with the results. And, my residents were happy too. A lot of them would comment about how nice they thought their housing was. And so it felt really good. It felt like I'd found sort of a perfect win-win situation where I could provide a much-needed service and product that people wanted and get paid for it in return.
So I take it you're obviously utilizing phone, email, and you're managing this 10-unit yourself, Sara?
Oh, yes. So I was actually moving from Houston to South Carolina at the time. Yeah. So I ended up living maybe 45 minutes away from the apartments. But during a renovation phase, I like to be boots on the ground as much as possible. Once a property is stabilized, that's not necessarily the case because at that point you have your trusted contractors in place and you've generally personally placed the majority of your residents. So it's a very stable property and community that can be a lot more hands-off at that point. Excellent.
So, yeah, just for clarification, the property's in South Carolina. You were in Houston in the middle of the move. Purchase it as you're moving to South Carolina. And then was it close to where you were living at the time so you can get to it easily? Or what was the travel like to this property from your home?
Yeah, it was about a 45-minute commute. So not terrible, but not ideal.
Okay. Well, I mean, anything can be accomplished. I mean, going through a move, purchasing a property, not only are you managing the property, you're managing the capital repairs, making this property better than it was before. And I want to get into some of that on the other side, what the improvements were and how that essentially translated into the value of the property. And I also want to talk about cash flow of the property, and then I want to talk about what you did next. So we'll be right back after a short break. You're listening to the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show.
Got questions? Call Lifestyles Unlimited at 855-497-4335. The Real Estate Investor Radio Show continues next.
I was at a seminar one time and a guy was sitting up there and he was saying, what you really need is you need the young, aggressive entrepreneur people to go out there and take that money and invest it with them. I walked up to the front of the stage and I said, hey, I'm that guy you're talking about that should be mentoring these people on how to do this. The guy goes, sir, we don't allow solicitation. And I said, no, you don't understand. I'm here to tell you I'm exactly the guy you were telling them to look for. And I'm willing to help them for nothing. And the guy goes, if you don't stop soliciting, I'm going to have the security come and get you. And I said, I can see you're a scam. I'll just leave. Everything I said had gone through the intercom. So I walked out of the seminar room and 200 people followed me. And that's how Lifestyles was started.
Are you ready to get up and follow Dell? Join us today at LifestylesUnlimitedWorkshop.com.
Creating the lifestyle you've always wanted. You're hearing Lifestyles Unlimited's Real Estate Investor Radio Show.
Welcome back to the show. Standing in for Al Gordon on Tell Al. My name is Mike Harrison. I'm a radio host out of the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It's my pleasure to be joining you today. I have on our show Sara E from South Carolina. Sara's done it all, single-family houses, independent rental, small apartment communities, and she's a passive investor. Sara, we were just talking about that first purchase. Can you give us some takeaways on your cash flow and what you made after selling that property as far as a return?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, when I purchased it, it hadn't been renovated in forever. So one of the things that I would do is new flooring, new carpeting. I love that vinyl wood look. Many times new appliances. And we would do like a tiled backsplash in the kitchen, upgrade the lighting. And I would always have a plumber and an electrician come in and check everything. So most of the time that meant pulling old toilets, installing new ones that were easier to clean and easier to repair if there ever needed to be repair.
Yep.
Upgrading faucets and fixtures, things like that. And I was part of an energy efficiency program as well. So we'd have like LED lighting throughout, and it was wonderful to be able to have a green impact as well during these renovations. But
great.
At takeover, the rent for a 2-bedroom was $475. By the time I sold the property, it was just over $800 a month.
Fantastic.
So that gives you an idea of
yeah, just about an 80% increase. That's incredible. And I want the listener to understand, a lot of folks out there believe that the model is to buy a property and then, obviously, like your previous owner, right, don't do anything to the property. And that is 100% opposite of what we do. We go in, we fix everything. We call it the Lifestyles Unlimited model. Best product, best price. Why would we upgrade the units? Why would we spend the money and fix everything? Well, one, we can attract a better quality resident for that property. People will pay you more to live in nice places. At the same time as you're raising rents, the value of this property is increasing. This is a business, folks. So when the business returns increase, the value of the business increases. And that's essentially the LU model. Best product, best price, ran by the best people. And our residents will stay longer. They're happier. They want a clean, functional place to live, and that's what we do essentially in a nutshell. Sara, that's a fantastic story. Great job on that first property. Now, was it after this property that you went on to the houses, or you got your second apartment community?
Yeah, so from there I went and I purchased some single family as well. And one of the reasons why I wanted to purchase single family was because my daughter, I think she was 14 at the time, actually maybe she was 13, she said, Mom, I want to invest with you.
Okay.
She said, I've saved $1,000 and I want to invest with you. And I was looking at the numbers for multifamily. I'm like, honey, it really doesn't make sense for you to put $1,000 into multifamily. But if I did single family, that would totally make sense. So I actually I closed on 2 single family homes in the same week. And I said, here are the numbers. Here are my projections. Choose which one you want to invest in. And if you have any questions, ask me. So she chose a winner. I mean, they were both winners, but she chose the most optimal home for her investment.
Wonderful.
And I was able to apply the Lifestyles model to that as well, and refinanced it right around month 3. And so at that point, I returned 70% of her original capital to her.
Bingo. There we go. Okay.
I know. And at the closing table, for refinance, that was the first time I, was proving what Dell had told me, that, oh, yes, you can refinance and get tax-free money. And I just sat there at the closing table like, wow, Dell is so right, because it's one thing to hear it. It's one thing to hear other people's stories, and it's quite a different matter to do it for yourself,
It's jaw-dropping.
Yes, like a true investor. She received statements every quarter. She returned, I want to say, upon the sale of that house, we had returned her something like $220,000 12% of her original investment. So she was thrilled and sold for the rest of her life on that.
Now, Sara, you're essentially nothing but a passive. You've sold all your properties and you're a passive investor. Talk to me about your goals as a passive and what drove you to, you're a very hands-on person, I can tell just talking to you through this show. And now, what do you have your hands on? And you're a passive. How's that going for you?
So it's been wonderful. It's a little bit weird that I'm not, like visiting my properties, and I had to sort of get over not having very much to do at all.
Yeah.
So, but it's wonderful because, I was able to almost quadruple our family's net worth since I bought that first property.
Fantastic.
So we've got all of that invested. And I really like a mix of properties. I love having sort of longer term holds now, where I don't have to think about it very much. So that's been good for us. Having the mixture is good. And so we've got sort of older properties that we've invested in and newer ones, because as soon as I sold everything, we immediately invested a ton of that money, which with the bonus depreciation actually helped me avoid federal capital gains, which was a really big deal.
It is.
After selling everything. So yeah, I've learned so much. And with the income that's coming from these properties, which is essentially tax-free, I'm able to do what I want now. I have one daughter in college, and, we're able to pay for her to go to college, which will give you
That's
a heart
big.
attack
Yes.
when you start seeing those prices.
It's shocking.
And, and so now I'm not working. I'm actually about to transition to a master's program. It's just something I had always wanted to do. And I don't plan to ever work full-time again. I'll only ever be part-time, mainly because I just love it. I love contributing and sort of the give and take of being out in the world. So
I'm happy for you.
It's gotten me a lot of freedom.
You've entered that do what you want, when you want, where you want, with whomever you want, on your terms, right? This is the time of your life when you go, gosh, I always wanted to do that, or I never had an opportunity to travel here when I was young or working or raising our children or what have you. And that's a great place to be mentally. It's a great place to be. It just feels good. The sun looks different. Wine tastes differently. Great positive aspects of being a passive investor and having that time back to yourself. I want to ask you this, or I want to dig into it. You mentioned something earlier that it's a first world problem, right? You sell these properties and you've got this huge tax burden that could be coming down the road and hitting you. But essentially passive gains offset passive losses and those losses that you get with the depreciation. I'm not sure everyone understands that, but we're depreciating essentially our investments, and so we can challenge that against the positive gains. And it's a paper loss. It's not a true loss, but that's just reason number 5 to invest in real estate, essentially. So, Sara, on your passive investing, are you looking in certain states? Are you looking at certain leads? What kind of opportunities are you seeking as a passive?
Yeah, it varies. So, one of the things that people sort of talk about is, do you go for the deal or do you go for the lead? I have to feel comfortable with a lead. So I prefer leads that I have had personal relationships with, where I've been on their properties and seen how they're doing things, what their management companies look like. But I also like to look at the deal and the market. So I kind of look at everything. I'm at a phase of my life where I can be choosier now. I can pass something up and just say, yeah, I don't know, it's not quite what I'm looking for. But one of the most important things is what you said. Essentially the income that we get from these properties it's almost or always tax-free income because of the depreciation. But when you're looking to shelter capital gains, we were able to do that with the bonus depreciation that was still 100% last year. I believe it's gone down to 80% this year.
Correct.
But that was huge in helping us to, again, be able to invest more money and pay less in taxes because we're still investing the money. And so the tax incentive is there for that reason that, the government is like, hey, if you're continuing to invest in businesses that we think are important for our economy, we will give you a tax break for that. So it's not cheating.
No,
it's like
the rules are there. Yeah.
It's like taking advantage of an incentive for Americans to continue to invest your funds. So, and this was something, by the way, I had very little financial education prior to Lifestyles. And then I just jumped in head first and wanted to know everything and had a ton of questions. And I'm the annoying person who will ask a ton of questions. But then people would come up to me after and say, I'm so glad you asked that. Like, I had that question too, but didn't want to ask,
Yes.
So I'm about always learning. So, yeah.
Well, Sarah, that your keys to success essentially right there, just the fact that you're curious, you're always learning, you're asking questions, and I'm so impressed in what you've accomplished in a short amount of time. Essentially, you've changed your life. You've changed the trajectory of your family's life. You're doing what you want when you want. You're an A+ student. You came, you listened to Dell, you challenged essentially what he was saying, but then you implemented his teaching. And congratulations! Thanks again for coming on the show. For the rest of you out there, what are you waiting for? My name's Mike Harrison. I want you to remember, it's not the money, it's the lifestyle. See you next week.
The information and opinions you hear on the Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. The Lifestyles Unlimited Real Estate Investor Radio Show is for entertainment purposes only. Please consult a professional regarding your personal investment needs. Nothing presented constitutes an endorsement, recommendation, offer, or solicitation to buy or sell any product or security.